Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. I'm Brad Hairston.
And I'm Michael Marchuk.
And this is the weekly pulse check, taking a look at what's going on in the world of automation and AI. And as always, there's a lot happening. So Michael, let's dive right in. First article we're dealing with today from the world of M&A, big M&A transactions. This comes from Mobile World Live, and it reads, Salesforce swoops for Informatica in $8 billion deal. Now, I haven't said the name Informatica in a long time, but I know that they're out there. I know they're still a big player in the world of data integration and ETL and all those important things. But this is a big news. I mean, Salesforce, who, as you know, last year made a big splash with their own agentic AI platform called Agentforce. They feel like this is a necessary move to carry them forward. And as their CEO says, he believes this will create the most complete agent-ready data platform in the industry. So, Michael, do you think this will help Salesforce transform themselves from a market-leading CRM to a data platform company?
It's going to go a long way. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this type of activity where these very large entrenched players who have $8 billion to toss around to buy some of these, not that Informatica is a startup, but to buy some of these smaller players and bring them into their fold. I think you're going to see a lot more of this for a couple reasons. One, as you said, agents are all the rage, right? Mm-hmm. And even if a company does start on their own to try to build these out, the reality is that there's a lot of smaller players who are unencumbered by technical requirements from prior legacy implementations that they have to deal with. So they're much more nimble and create a more innovative solution in a very short period of time. So we start looking at this kind of transaction. I think this is definitely a technology play, bringing Informatica back into the Salesforce fold and allowing them to enhance their Agentforce kind of ecosystem. So I do think this is going to be very helpful for Salesforce. I'm not sure how industry changing it's going to be. Certainly people who have Salesforce will likely be very excited to look into this and see what it can do. But we'll see. We'll see how this works from a broader perspective.
I do agree with you. I think we'll see more of these kinds of acquisitions.
Yep.
And it is consistent with even what some of the big AI companies are doing. You may recall Palantir AI. They've recently come out and said that they plan to be the AI platform that connects and works with your existing systems and data, exactly like they are. Don't worry about integration. We're just going to come in and make it happen.
That sounds like a lot like the players that in our space that we've heard from the past 20 years.
No doubt about that. Salesforce also mentions in this article that they believe the Informatica acquisition is going to play a big role in data transparency and visibility and governance. And I agree with that to a degree. It certainly will provide much better documentation and understanding of how integrations are happening and where they're happening and help with data quality. But governance goes so far beyond that. And I'm afraid the impact of large language models in the mix is still going to bring some big risk that Informatica is potentially not able to mitigate in any way. Okay, well, let's go to the second article, and this one also is M&A related. This comes
mergers and acquisitions for those who don't know what M&A is about.
Mergers and acquisitions. Thank you. This one comes from Yahoo Finance, and it reads: Apple faces first serious threat in 20 years as OpenAI acquires iPhone maker's former design chief, Jony Ives' hardware startup. That's a long
title.
I got to take a nap after reading that headline. So this one was cheap, Michael, compared to the last one. This was only $6.5 billion. That's chump change in today's world.
Surely.
And what OpenAI did is they acquired IO Products, which is a device company run by Jony Ives, who was formerly Apple's design chief. He oversaw the development of the iPhone, the iPad, anything with the letter I in front of it. So he's a mover and a shaker And this is creating a lot of waves. So Michael, is OpenAI headed into devices?
We've seen several device makers try to make big splashes as they approach the market with their hardware, whether it's a pin, whether it's something that's a small device that you can take with you. The reality is these are very difficult form factors for people to adapt to when they already have an adequate form factor that they carry around all the time. So breaking into this kind of device market is extremely difficult. Now, with that said, if you're breaking into that device market with someone who helped define that device market, you probably have a better shot at making waves, which is why I think, as this article mentioned, that when that announcement happened, that Apple's stock dropped 2% because of the potential impact. You and I both know, though, Apple has over 2 billion installed users out there using their product right now. And for any device manufacturer to come out, there would have to be some massive sea change in the way we interact or use those devices. Now, again, we're all thinking, or at least perhaps I am, and maybe even the person who's writing this article, we're thinking, okay, we've seen the pin, the devices, the whatever they are. Maybe this is something even more revolutionary, like a humanoid robot that you'd have at your house or something along those lines from a device perspective. We're not sure exactly what it is. So when it comes to the device, it's very, very nebulous. And the $6.5 billion was really paid for the core team that was putting this together. Because as far as I know at this point, IO Products doesn't actually have a product in the market. Yeah. But with that said, I'm sure they were shopping around some prototypes, which is why OpenAI felt it was a good idea to spend this much money on 55 engineers and Jony and I to be able to do this. Now, the good thing behind it is that if they are that far along, their estimate of saying they could bring a product to market by 2026, okay, then perhaps they are buying something that is actually viable and not just an idea on paper kind of thing. But yet to be seen. It's yet to be seen. And I don't think Apple is going to be bullied into anything at this point because there's plenty of competitors in that phone market right now. We've kind of reached this kind of stasis where we've got everyone coming out with slightly better, but it's nothing revolutionary at this point because the form factor and the integration has been honed for the past, almost 20 years. So
yeah. And you're right. Devices have not fared well in the last couple of years. And not only that, but this is in a space dominated by two players, right? Google and Apple. Yeah. And I do think Jony Ives might be the one who can make it happen, who can make headway here in combination with OpenAI. And let's say it is some type of phone, or maybe it's reinventing the phone. I imagine something that has a lot of agents on it, and maybe the interface is different. But it will be very fascinating to see what comes out of this. And I don't think it's going to take long. I would not think this is going to percolate for 2 to 3 years. I think they're going to act on this $6.5 billion acquisition in record time. By the way, IO Products was making no money. So
right. Well, how do you make money when you have no products? So I don't make money anyway.
It's not like Jony Ives was crushing it on his own, right? But he does.
The things that I want to bring up that this is a case for that. Even Apple is facing right now. Where do you manufacture all of these devices? Because now we have this tariff situation that, at least within the United States, that's causing global waves.
Yeah.
And so if they want to go into hardware, now you have manufacturing logistics, you've got where you source those components from, how long will it take you to actually get those into the market, even if you quote unquote release something in 2026. How long will it take you to fulfill any of the orders that come out of that product launch? So there's some real challenges that OpenAI is going to face that as a software maker right now, as they have been, hey, next week we're going to release 05 or 07 or whatever they're going to throw out there, their next release version, because it's software. They can do it to all bazillion users that they're using their platform tomorrow.
Right.
Can't do that with hardware. There's a physical limitation of how fast you can produce and how fast you can ship. So
Right.
I don't know if they understand we're getting into that. But
Maybe these data centers that OpenAI is building all over the U.S. Maybe they'll just use some of that space for
manufacturing
the new phone, whatever it is.
Very likely, yes. That's probably the case. Right next to their nuclear power plants. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on. Article number 3 here. This comes from Wired, and it's titled "Inside Anthropic's First Developer Day, Where AI Agents Took Center Stage." So Anthropic, as the article title implied, held their first ever developer day. And while AI agents were all the talk, really this event was about giving their CEO and their chief product officer a chance to hold court and make all kinds of bold predictions and throw out opinions on just about everything. Now, one thing they did release was that Anthropic's goal is by the end of the year deploying a virtual collaborator in the form of an autonomous AI agent. So that's interesting. Had not heard that before. But the rest of the event was saying things like, yes, AI agents will take over the world. All jobs will be done by AI systems, et cetera, et cetera. So what struck you about the things in this article, Michael?
Well, certainly statements like that will always get headlines, right? So there's one way to bring notice to what you're doing. There's a couple things in the article that I thought were very interesting. One of them, one of the questions was, when do you think the first billion-dollar company with only one human employee will exist? And he said, without breaking a sweat, 2026. It's going to happen in 2026. I'm not sure if that's real, but the reality is there's going to be a point where there's going to be an organization that does create substantial value with one human employee.
Right.
And right now, I think the closest thing we have is OnlyFans. And there's a handful of employees there making an obscene amount of money doing obscene things. But the reality is that's about as close as we got right now. So to go to that next level, having one employee break that number, that's going to have to be pretty amazing. A second set of things that I thought were related to the way jobs were changing and how they were changing. He made some comments about how the way the developers are working with it, it's inside of Anthropic, and indicating that, right now, he says something like 70% of Anthropic's code is written by Claude. So I thought that was very interesting. And his thought was that within the next 6 months, in March, he said within 6 months, so that puts us to September, that he said up to 90% would be written by their Claude system. And I thought that's very interesting because, we've got programmers doing a whole lot of things. And so they basically asked them to follow it up. It's like, well, what does that mean for the programmers who are doing this? And they said, well, they're orchestrating their Claude code base and, of course, attending meetings. And his quote I thought was perfect. Was like, it really becomes apparent how much else is in the software engineering role. So, again, these are things where you start looking at the totality of what your outcome is, rather than looking at the individual components of someone on an assembly line putting something together, even whether it's physical or in this case, a set of code, and realizing, well, that's only one part of it. Looking at how you coordinate those efforts and how you actually create value at the end of the goal. So very interesting how he approached that. So the final thing that I want to bring up with this is even saying all those things, the one employee with $1 billion valuation company, and the fact that all of his employees now, or his programmers, are having all this extra time because, by September, 90% of the code is going to be written by Claude. The fact is that in the past year, Anthropic has doubled its human employee count to 1,300 people. So in the past year, they've gone to 1,300 people, doubling their size. So with all this talk about how Claude is going to be doing everything, the reality is they still need humans. They're still adding humans, and they're doubling their size of the number of people they have. Now, perhaps had they not let Claude do that, maybe they would be a 10,000 person firm. I don't know. But the reality is that they're still using humans, and a lot of them be doing real tasks for the company to make sure it's successful.
There was a lot of talk at the event as well about the fact that all of us are going to have to get used to managing AI agents, maybe hundreds of them. And that's a skill set virtually nobody has today. and it's going to be different than managing people, obviously, but that's the new world order. And I think more than one person brought that up in their discussion on stage. It sounds okay to me as long as I don't have to write performance reviews exactly for the agentic entities under my realm. But okay, well, let's move on. The final article, this was a really good one. I like this. I thought it's written by a gentleman named Nikunj Kathari. He is an advisor and an angel investor in San Francisco, who, by my estimation, is in his mid-30s. I could be wrong.
By his picture, yeah.
He's pretty young. And he wrote an interesting piece called Memory Changes Everything. Now, in this article, he's talking about the enhancements in memory. For example, ChatGPT rolled out this enhanced memory to paid subscribers, which is kind of the beginning of seeing this take shape in the market. It's AI that doesn't just respond, but it truly grasps the patterns in how we think. It's understanding your reasoning patterns and your decisioning process. And the more of that it understands, the more it kind of gets into your psychology. And the more I talk about this, the more concerned I get, but the more excited. I'm kind of conflicted. So, Michael, what are your thoughts on this?
So I am also concerned and conflicted, probably more than I am excited, although I understand the potential behind it. So the idea of taking the memory piece is it's more than simply remembering the conversations you've had in the past to say, oh, yes, I remember that you said you like dogs. And I remember you kept on asking me questions about a golden retriever dog. So it's likely that either you have a golden retriever or someone close to you has a golden retriever. I'll remember that fact, right? The challenge that we have is that right now AI works pretty well in the context of, say, our ordering of materials. So if you go on any of the majors like Amazon site or their app, they'll often have, after you're looking at a particular item, you might want to consider these items, or our customers have also bought these items in addition to that, which kind of indicates a pattern that has been recognized in there. But all the time you look at it, it says, okay, you're buying paint, you'll probably need paint sticks. You're buying a crib, you'll probably need a screwdriver to put it together, that kind of stuff. But when you look at it, if you take the memory part, and now you add context to the memory, which is what they're suggesting here, is that if my cart now contains a paint and it contains a bassinet and it contains baby clothes, it's very likely that I'm probably expecting a baby or know somebody who's expecting a baby very close to me that at least I'm going to paint for them. And that, put that together, it may offer you a very different set of selections depending on when you're ordering it and how you're ordering it. Hey, you might want to consider looking at these, since I know that you live in Chicago or Seattle, here's some specific baby clothes for the time your baby's going to be born. You might want to consider having a coat for them or whatever, that are completely outside of the fact that you're ordering paint and a bassinet. So that's where this is coming into context, where you're actually seeing it. And if you ask a person about this stuff, to us, it's intuitive. Of course, you mentioned your wife is pregnant, Brad, and so therefore, we're moving forward. And I could understand if you're ordering this and ordering that, because it makes complete sense because there's a context around it. Applying that context and then having that memory forward within an LLM seems interesting and exciting, but it could also seem kind of creepy, having your LLM know everything about you. Some of the examples they use in here, I think, were very relevant. They said, imagine you're up late at night coding, and past times that you've done this, you've had a specific playlist that you put on. We know that, in past times when you were stressed, you'd order Chinese food. So your agent now will go out and order Chinese food and start your smart speaker playing your playlist without you even asking. It sounds like it's an innocuous kind of thing, but all of a sudden now there's actions that are happening behind the scenes based on things that you haven't asked for. Yeah. So, again, not always a bad thing, right? But we need to start getting used to understanding how this could affect the way we perceive and interact with our loved ones and those around us.
The one statement from this piece that maybe bothered me the most, it said, "We actively design systems to remember, understand, and shape human thinking. Systems will soon understand human reasoning better than humans themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the part of that that bothers me is I do believe our decisioning, our judgment, our reasoning is an innately human or capability that we need to hold on to. It's part of what makes us human. It's part of what differentiates us from the machines. So all of this seems to imply, no, the machines are going to do that pretty well. In fact, they may even do it better. They may understand your reasoning, your thought patterns, why you think the way you do. So yeah, we'll see where this goes. By the way, Anthropic version of this, they came up with a acronym that we have heard now many times, MCP, which is Model Context Protocol. And it's the plumbing that lets understanding flow between applications. So it's their version of doing the same thing that ChatGPT has done by enhancing their memory and getting into this space. So
does this remind you of a plot point in the Terminator at all? Where if you take the fact that we want to protect our planet, and we find out that the history of our human race is war, and we can't ever get along well together, the machines will make the logical decision based on what it knows about us, right?
My brain did not go there. What I was thinking about was,
unfortunately, mine always does.
Yeah, yours always goes there. I was thinking about the robot assistant to Iron Man. What was the...
Okay, yeah, Jarvis.
Yes, there you go. Because, he was always thinking about his master and had his best interest in mind and kind of predicting what he wanted or needed. So it felt like he was always, he understood his boss. He understood his type of thinking. But that's maybe a milder view of what you're talking about. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today's Pulse Check. Remember, every week we publish another podcast with an amazing guest. So be sure and check that out. Otherwise, we will see you back here same time next week for the Pulse Check. Bye for now.